coming out. Free-flowing conversation tonight. Ask questions along the way. Tonight the purpose is to talk about the proposed budget. This is the second night of the three-town tour, as I call it. We will be doing this again in May when we start to look at what we need to think about for future in terms of our grade configurations and our school sizes. Here we go. Starting with this, if you've seen the budget book, you've seen the picture before. The theme for this year's budget is reinvesting in our future. Why? Because the little guy's going to grow up really quickly, as you'll see by the end. And we need to start thinking about where we are, what we want to be, and what we possibly can be. Where did this all begin? So for some of you, I've seen you before, we were here in December. Seems like a couple weeks ago, right? Open door Fridays throughout the year. In January, people sent in public questions and suggestions and ideas, some of which helped frame this budget. Workshop in January, staff meetings, public responses were posted. Board of Ed budget workshop, proposed the budget on March 12th. The package you'll see tonight came out on March 12th. I will say this right now. It is fluid, and as I go through it, there are going to be some changes I'm going to highlight. It is an ongoing process. We cannot get stuck in a world where we think a budget is a budget, because what do we know? Our populations change, our students change, and our needs have to change. But you're going to see the flexibility built in there, and I believe tonight you'll see more transparency. This week we're doing the town tour. Board of Ed will get a revised budget on the 9th, budget hearing the 23rd, budget meeting on May 7th. A little different. I start with revenue. Why do I start with revenue? I own a house, run a house, I have X number of dollars, I work to those number of dollars. This is not what most superintendents do, and I apologize for not being that person. If you read the papers about other districts, not to cite them or pick on them, they'll ask for 3%. That's the average year. Every year we ask for 3%. What do my profession do? Then the board cuts them back to 1.5%, and while that's going on, I threaten to cut sports, the arts, music, and everything that matters, and get people all riled up. Then it goes to referendum and they settle at 1%. I don't believe in that. Not who I am, it's not what I'm going to do, and I'll explain as we go through a little bit further. Revenue. Budgeted revenue for this 17-18 year, projected revenue, and the proposed revenue for this budget, external of the local contribution. So we start with ag tuition at $1.2 million. I will say tonight, read the paper, we're accepting 8 additional students from Region 10. That revenue is going up. Special ed tuition, preschool tuition, state grant for ag, and 2 new areas, Medicaid and excess costs. These are revenue sources the district has always received. They just weren't part of the presentation or the budget. Likewise, they're now there. We're counting them, we're putting them forward. Miscellaneous comes from facilities, interest on income, rental fees for the use of facilities, but you'll note, gate receipts from sporting events go back into the athletic fund for student activities. They're not being taken by the district. Advertising, not something we do or did. It's part of last year, it's been removed. You notice right here, adjustment for state Medicaid that was included this year. That was the accumulated Medicaid from 5 previous years that had been left. This year was put on the books. Every year moving forward, we will claim annual revenue. When you look at categories by town, last year's revenue from the town budget, $17,307,000. The actual next year, $17,307,000. There is no change to the local contribution in this budget. But no change does not mean no impact. Last night I was in Warren. Warren had 126 students. Their net change is negative $150,000 to their local contribution. Tonight I'm in Morris. Your annual impact is negative $500,000 year over day. Goshen, where I'll be on Thursday, if anybody wants to come and lend me moral support, will be $655,000. Why? Every town has lost students. So we get to the important local contribution graph. And you'll see from 7 years ago, from 2012, 2013, Morris, second line down, is paying $8,000 a year more. But in there, you've seen fluctuations as high as 6.6 million, again, down 500. Goshen is up over $1 million over that same time span. Warren, basically flat, $10,000 difference. And you look at the internal assessment of students. All three towns are down. The difference, Morris resident population is down nearly 50 students year over year, from October 1, 16 to October 1, 17. Goshen's down 5 students. They're holding a bigger piece of the pie. That is why their portion's going up and Morris' portion's going down.
Morris is which line?
Morris is second line, middle line, down from 291 to 243. Well, somebody asked, what does this trend look like? If you play it out over the next 3 years with no change, you look at the graduating classes leaving in the 12th grade from Morris, Warren, and Goshen, and look at the incoming kindergartners. Warren's going to see a decline, Morris is going to see a decline, and Goshen's going to see a decline, with Goshen continuing to hold a bigger piece of the district. What we've tried to look at, and people have asked, well, how can we stop this fluctuation, is looking at a 3-year trend or a 5-year trend. But right now it is legislated on one count date, the October 1st official count. And that's why you get these fluctuations, I'll go back a slide, that you see. So why? These were increased years. Again, this is a flat year, these last two. And even in a flat year, you're seeing changes. If everything holds, as I said, for the next coming 2 years, Morris will see continued decreases, so will Warren, with Goshen picking up the majority of that in that time. So again, Thursday night, 6 p.m., Goshen cafeteria.
So that's the question, what is, can we do, maybe you're going to show it later, but what is your cost?
Per pupil? Oh, we got the next slide. Were you there last night? No? There's your per pupil slide. That is your local revenue. And if anybody was here in December, it was stated it was going to go above 25,000 based on all projections. And remember, 22.8 to 25 is no local contribution net change. It's a zero budget. So when people sit there and say, well, we need more, where I started this conversation, ask for 3%, don't lay anybody off, have those, just keep doing what we're doing. I can't do that. That's more than enough to function where we are. So what are we going to do differently? That gets to our expense side.
So what should the cost be?
There is no should
Someone
be.
told me that you have an ag program here, which tends to be a little more expensive. But if we benchmark other school districts that look like this, what should the cost be?
There is no should be cost.
I don't
Because,
think it has
no,
to be. There has to be
there isn't, because unfortunately, a board member asked us at the March meeting, what should it look like, right? The problem is, everybody does it a little bit differently, and you can't calculate years of increases or population declines, or what happened, if you read the paper this past weekend, 5 districts were cited for reducing their budgets and not maintaining their effort.
I mean, I don't agree with that. We gotta get 2 or 3 districts that look as much like us as possible, and look at their cost per student.
So if you look at probably somebody comparable,
It doesn't have to be in Connecticut either, it can be elsewhere.
well,
One or two or three.
It's gotta
Right,
be,
so
it's
stay
gotta
in
be.
Connecticut.
if you stay in Connecticut, probably the closest thing you have to a situation like ours is Region 12, and they're going to be somewhere right in that neighborhood right now. And I don't have the exact number in front of me, but if you look at their local contribution, it's going to be right about that same number.
Region 12, where is that?
That is Roxbury, Bridgewater, Washington.
And do you have another one that would look like us?
That has a full K-12. No, Region 1's too geographically different. The problem is you have geographic issues with some of these towns, and transportation factors into it. That would be your best comparison. Probably your only close enough comparison.
It's not good enough, we need more.
Oh, you don't have a regional state. You know how many districts we have in the state? 169, not counting the charters, the vocationals, and everything else. So, I don't disagree with you, and I would say part of this has been built up over time. But if you look at regional districts and you want comparison, there's not a lot of regional districts. You can't even use Region 7 because they're a high school district, where elementaries just feed into that, which is what we were as a district before 1970. They're not saving anything from that model. So it's hard to find apple-to-apple comparisons for regional districts. Likewise, it's hard to find districts. You can't compare Litchfield's expenses with Torrington. You can't even compare us to Region 10, which is Harwinton Burlington, because they receive significant more ECS, which is state funding. Expenses. First column is the budgeted expenses. I want to go over this because of a couple factors. There was a $150,000 carryover as part of last year's approved budget. It's not there. In fact, when you actually look at the projected expenses, we have $95,000 of over expenditures from the previous year. 150 plus 95 means we started the year on the wrong side of about $250,000. One thing this budget does not have, you'll notice, we do not have carryover, not planned. We are seeing a reduction in certified salaries. We have less students. I've said it publicly. I know there's teachers and administrators in the room. We are overstaffed in many areas. We need to still work on that. Why do we need to work on that? Because we'll get to it, but our configuration lends to overstaffing. Classified salaries, down over $500,000 year to date, and that is mostly with the switch to buying classified staff from Ed Advance. Employee benefits, mostly health benefits, are driving that number. Out-of-district tuition, these are our special education students that we provide out-of-district placement for, down $109,000. You talk about percentages of out-of-district placed students, we are among the best in that. We do very well. Transportation is contracted. This will be year 6 of 7. People have always asked, well, can we do anything about that? I'll explain our transportation situation in this simple scenario. Everybody here know what a balloon payment is? Our current transportation contract would have ended on June 30th of this year with a balloon payment of $300,000 to buy the buses. Not a good expense. That contract had 2 more option years to spread out those payments, which we had to take advantage of. At the end of year 7, the bus contract as it currently exists will come to an end. We have very large buses that we're in the process of buying. They're not full. But at the end of year 7, the transportation contract has a caveat that the current provider can buy our buses for $3,000 apiece. We own 13 buses. At the end of year 7, we will sell 13 buses for $39,000 and be able to renegotiate. But over the next 2 years, we got to pay off the $300,000 we still owe on those buses. As you can say, this is a bad deal that we have to get out of, and we'll get out of it in 2 more years. Nothing against the company; they didn't force us to do it. We're there. We've got to move forward. Health services, pretty much flat. Administration, I will get into some savings there. Operations and maintenance, this is your heating, your electric. We're going to talk about we have potential savings there. Capital and debt, the biggest jump on there. This budget is calling for $500,000 to go into capital. And I'll explain how that's going to be utilized, but this is to our facilities. And I'll explain why, but in short, our facilities have been not neglected, but overlooked for too long. Last, $100,000 contingency, not at superintendent's discretion. in going through this budget, I'm gonna do this tonight with you all, you're gonna find a lot of areas where there was a lot of extra money. That money's going into capital, that money's going into a contingency. Why a contingency? If we get a student who moves into district tomorrow that needs significant special needs services, that could cost the district $100,000. So instead of arguably inflating a line and having a savings down the road, the money's there in reserve. It'll be responsibility of the administration, myself, to ask the board to say, we need to go into that. Where does it go? 72% of our district budget is tied up in salaries, certified, classified, and employee benefits. Just over 8 in learning programs, capital debt, with the addition, doubles to 5.5 or 5.25. Everything else is only 12.9%. So when you're talking about working in these parameters, you are really hamstrung by 3 areas: certified salary, classified salary, and the benefits for those employees. So certified salary. This is where we get into staffing models. Anybody read the paper today? I am working on multiple district plans. The question was asked last night about closing Warren. Favorite topic for people. We actually have a 2 small school problem, not just a 1 small school problem. And as Morris residents, you will sit here and tell me if I propose closing Morris, it's dead on arrival because you don't want an empty building in the middle of your town. And I don't blame you, I live in Harwinton. Likewise, when I was in Warren last night, there were 80 people in that room. And they were there to make sure that no one ever took that building and left that vacant in the middle of their town. And Goshen would probably tell you the same thing. So we got to look at how we're doing this stuff.
Who owns that building? Land and building?
Region 6 owns it, but there's debt on all of it. And what's the debt? We just put brand new roofs. We took state money on those buildings. When you take state money, you make a promise that building is going to be a school. So in the case of Warren, we'll estimate it at $300,000. If we don't use that as a school, we repay $300,000 to the state. Larger building here, we didn't use it as a school, we'd be in for about $750,000 back to the state.
We took state money to do our roofs?
Absolutely.
How much? Just curious.
2 and change?
How much?
2 and change, I don't have it off the top of my head.
Wow. With all the millions we put in on top of it, we took that much from the state?
I believe so. If you factor in Womogo into that as well, absolutely.
What is the Region 6 debt load? There's debt.
We're gonna get there at the end, I promise. Because the only debt, you're gonna see debt service go in the right direction, but let me walk through this and I will get there. So we're gonna play a little game, we played it last night. Go to grade 1. 48 students, and includes students in life skills, so let's just call it 46. How many teachers would we agree is 46 students? 2. If you really wanted to get generous, maybe 3. Not here. Because 26 is too big for 1, and not really 2. But we need 2, because it's in Goshen. And 14, we'd say is too small for 1, but it's 1 in Morris. And 8's a half when you calculate that Warren has joined classrooms of 2 grades. So if 46 was 2 in some people's eyes, in our world right now it's 3.5. Fast forward down here to grade 6. Do it again. We've got 57. 57 we would agree would be 3. It's 2 in Goshen at 31. 1 at 18.5. It's 3.5. And this can be repeated pretty much throughout the whole line. It's not just about closing one school. It's a conversation that says we have to do something better than this, or we're going to keep doing the same thing with our staffing. And this was designed in 1970. And it clearly states we will use our elementary buildings in the charter. It also says we won't transport students in elementary across grades K through 6 into different districts. That's happened over the years on special exception. But if you look at it, this is one of the issues we face. We also have a changing demographic you need to understand. Next year, the middle school is 96 students. below 100, a drop of 14. Remember, those are just Warren Morris Goshen students. High school is at 414 and actually will be above 420 when you factor in the 8 additional that were not included. The high school will be right around 519, 520. Nobody leaves, no one else moves, etc. Come down here. Out of the 420 or 414, 242 to 250 are ag sci students. Comprehensive, 170. What it looks like, but of that 250, roughly 170 to 180 are coming from out of district. You didn't need it? You're good. Thank you. I was there.
You just knew what I was thinking.
So when you factor in,
So could just explain more too.
when you factor in a high school of 420, 170 of those 420, or 180 of those 420, number's a sliding number, not going to be exact, are not Warren Morris of Goshen. They're here for the Ag Sci program.
And then what is, you charge for that? obviously?
We charge. We get
What is the per student charge for that?
$68.23 tuition, $28.20 state grant. There is a bill out there now to increase that to $13,000 per student.
Total.
So we pick up the balance of that?
We don't pick up the balance, and when you actually factor it in,
You are, you're subsidizing $12,000.
if you factor it against 25, that's one way to look at it, but I will say this. You're not subsidizing it, because if you did not have those students, you'd have a high school of roughly 200 students.
But you're doing variable costing, which never makes sense. First thing you gotta do, have you done fixed cost versus variable cost? I mean, it seems to me you're spreading way too much fixed cost over. It's declining smaller and smaller population of students. You're trying to price a variable cost model when it's, you gotta recover the fixed cost.
There's an acronym in the state of Connecticut called MBR. Minimum budgeting restriction requirements. You can look at me like that, I understand that. Not my law. I'm working in the parameters that you're able to work in. Not my charter, not really anybody's. We've lived, but it has to be adjusted. So I can understand the frustration, because if you look at school budgeting with a clear and coherent mind, you'd ask yourself, really? And I often do that, and we're going to get there in a little bit further. But it's not. I would ask you, go attend any school budget, anywhere. Go to Litchfield, they just passed a 0.5% increase or something like that. And you're going to say, why?
Well, what you gotta do is you gotta look at that 13,000 and make sure there's contribution margin there. Those, at least the
It's actually
13,000.
fixed by the state of Connecticut.
But you've gotta look at whether that 13,000 is at least providing the variable cost and hopefully subsidizing a bit of your fixed cost. If that's the case, it's better at least than the fact that that $13,000 in variable cost costs you, who knows
So
what it costs you?
I'll liken it to the innkeeper. Or discount rooms go up on hotels.com and every place else.
That's because they're providing contribution to the fixed cost. You're better off
Absolutely.
selling that hotel room for half the price.
Thank you.
Because it is providing, but is
Thank
that
you.
the case?
That is absolutely the case.
Well, you need to prove that that 13,000 is eating into, is actually helping subsidize your fixed
So
cost.
without the, go back for a second, and we'll just do some rough numbers out of goodwill. Without what equates to $2 million of extra revenue to this district from the ag program, at an average teacher salary of $60,000, laying off 30 teachers.
60,000, you got it fully loaded with benefits, it's about 120,000.
No, it's not even close to that. It's 60,000 is your average teacher salary because you don't lay off the top
What's your fringe rate? It's gotta be 30-40%.
25 and change.
All right, so you're not.
So I'm not even factoring that in, but still, we cut $2 million right off the top right now. You can lay 30 teachers off. That's not a threat. It's not. That's just reality. You have classes, yeah. You'd have grade levels. What's our 7th grade this year? 32 students that's rising up. So there's absolutely a benefit to it, and we can keep, but if you let me get to some other things, we'll continue. Thank you. I went the wrong way. So, factoring in, what we're seeing is larger ag classes in freshman, sophomore, to balance off the declining enrollment that we've been seeing over the years. 109 was our budgeted, 108.5 is where we came in. We expect 104.9 next year. That will change in April. It will decrease a little bit further. Why will it decrease a little bit further? Because we're shoring up some classes where we don't have the need for staff. This budget calls for, at the time when it was presented, 4.3 full-time equivalent, FTE, full-time employee, versus last year's budget. We need to staff based on need and enrollment. Warren was overstaffed by 1 teacher. There's 4 classrooms. There's 5 certified regular educators. Goshen, I'm going to need an extra kindergarten next year. It's at that weird 26 number again. -1 there, +1 in Goshen. We will discontinue Latin at Wamogo. There are 20 to 22 students taking Latin. We are co-opting this with Litchfield High School at no additional cost. We are increasing ag siding to manage the growth based on certification needs. But we will also utilize staff with multiple certificates to fill need internally instead of hiring additional staff. We are repurposing our specialists for the creation of K-12 STEM coordinator and a K-12 language arts coordinator. We need to be more vertical. Why? Well, right now we have, depending on whose version of it you believe, somewhere between 4.2 and 4.7 specialists. Put it in perspective, and look at other districts, we're probably double where we should be for a district of our size. We will have shared library and media specialists across all sites. And the expected reduction in force, those are actual people, as of this presentation that was on the 12th of March, is a 2.2 FTE, full-time equivalent. However, the final is dependent on leaves, return from leave, retirements, and resignations. And I can tell you that has since changed based on some people going on leave and some potential people leaving. But that is an ongoing process. Classified salaries, these are our non-certified staff. Budgeted 43.6, end of the year 44.5, we'll be at 44 next year. We are developing school-based substitutes. Why? Because we pay a substitute $85 a day. But our contracted rate is $30 higher. We have to pay the company to find the substitute. We will have a building sub in every single one of our elementary schools. Every day. We will have a pool of subs at Wamogo where we need more. If Morris needs an extra sub because they got 2 or 3 people out and we can't cover, we send somebody down. Likewise, if Goshen needs somebody. In essence, we're providing more coverage, better coverage, and we're not making money for another organization. It's a savings of $45,000 annually. What does that equate to? Roughly 1 teacher. First step teacher. Staff for need, not for staffing. I don't know what the term was last night somebody used. They said that was cold. When I got here, we had few to no job descriptions in our district. When you don't have a job description, what does that tell you about what the person is doing? And nobody knows. Thank you, Doug. I appreciate that. We're getting, by end of this year, to have everybody with a job description. But if you are, for an example, a paraprofessional, you should be working with a student. We shouldn't be making up a job to keep you employed. Can't do it. And it wasn't at every school. There were some of those going on. And it continues, continue the trend of staff working a job description. You have a job description, you work to a job description. What I have to do. Seems like principals have to do and everybody has to do. And that's a significant change here. Benefits, these are contractual. We have a creation of a sick holiday conversion. This allows the exchange of 4 sick days for 1 actual paid day. It's an incentive for people actually to come to work. If you don't take days, they can actually convert them around the holidays for cash. Why? Because you can max out on the teacher contract with 200 sick days. It's a ton of time, folks. A year,
One school year.
that's more than 1 school year. It's a school year, that's a school year and a month.
School year.
By contract, 200. School year and a month.
They
So
don't
when
get
do-
200
they don't
a
get
year.
200.
They don't get 200 a year, they can max in 200. So after, get 15, so after 20 years, you could have, if you haven't taken any sick time, you can wind up having 200 days. We created a sick bank as well to help those without time. And we also put an incentive clause in the contract where if you don't take time during a semester, which means you don't require us a sub, or you don't require coverage, you actually get a benefit of $150. Medical insurance, or reduction of tuition contribution. This has fluctuated over the years, but to this point, we had a contract minimum. We will not be paying people's tuition for the sake of paying people's tuition. Medical insurance is up 7.79%. And unemployment, which over the years has been budgeted at $10,000 and always comes in at $40,000, has been corrected to $40,000. But this is the area that probably baffled me, and my gentleman in the back, this is the one that's probably going to drive you over the edge.
To go back to the medical insurance,
Yeah.
it's up 7.79,
Correct.
that's for this year.
That's for the year, that's for the coming year going forward.
Can you not negotiate that?
That's actually, we negotiated. It's not the negotiation issue, it's the claims history issue. We've had some bad experiences in the last 2 or 3 years, and that's going to drive the rate more than anything else.
Did they pick up more of it? I mean.
They did. In the out years, the premium has changed, and the cost share has changed as well. So the coming years, we're entering a new contract. Yes, teachers and the administrators are picking up more of the cost share and more of the premium.
I mean, that's the trend throughout whatever
It is.
you do at this
Yeah.
point,
Yeah, it
whether
absolutely.
industry or not. And the sick time also, I mean, industry, you got sick day, 6 days, that's it. You didn't get paid after that. That was the incentive to go to work. You didn't get paid, not get 200 extra days at the end.
Most of the language on accrual is 20, 30 years old, and it's phasing out in time. But it's been there a while. And I think everybody knows that, and this is not speaking of bargaining unit. Bargaining unit contracts, you make progress against them very slowly because many of the things that have been put in there have been put in there over decades and generations.
Now, is the state, when you do a